Hello there everyone, I am Toby from TIJ Music and today is time for another album review. Today I'm going to be reviewing this. It's a rare one that I've got on physical format. I rarely have albums on physical format these days, to be honest, but funnily enough, I did pick this up, I think it was probably about 12 months ago now, in Poundland, so you can probably guess how much it was. But I don't think it's the original edition. I think it's one of these that Music Magpie sell to Poundland. If you're in the UK, they're kind of like a recycling company, if you like, recycling old CDs, DVDs, games. And I think I gather this is a new cover from Magpie, and all the stuff inside has been redone by Music Magpie. But it's a rare one that I own on physical format. I also own the EP which followed this album as well, Take That Progressed. It just featured the 10 songs from the original Progress album as well as 8 new songs. But there will be another video which will review this because I can't really review 2 of them in one episode because this EP is certainly worth a review as well. So just wanted to show you that, but Progress is going to be the album that I focus on today. Now, if you know from my previous contents, even though I am only 18, I do tend to be living in a decade or even further behind the times, really. I'm very much a 70s and 80s fan, so you might be surprised that I am reviewing Take That, but I do really like this album. I'm not a massive Take That fan apart from this album, and I have to say it's definitely Take That's peak in my opinion. After this album, of course, Robbie Williams left for the second time. It would be Jason Orange's last album with Take That as well. So I think that Take That went downhill after this. However, I haven't really listened to much of the stuff after Progress, apart from Progress, of course, in terms of proper concrete albums. And haven't really listened to a lot of stuff before this. So I've listened to, of course, the popular stuff. You know, you've got Beautiful World from 2006, I think, Patience and Shine from that album. We've got Greatest Day from the Circus, and of course the earlier stuff when Robbie was in the band for the first time. You've got Relight My Fire, Everything Changes, Babe, all these songs that were created before Robbie Williams left the first time. But you've got good albums that came before this. Beautiful World's a decent album. I haven't quite listened to all of it, and again, Progress is the only album that I've listened to the whole entirety of Take That. But there are some good albums before, but honestly, I think this is a great album. I think it's possibly, and I'm not a big fan of the 2000s in terms of music. I do think that after 70s and 80s, stuff started to get a little bit worse, but I have heard from a few people, and this is a comment I quite like, and I think it really does sum up this album quite well, is that Progress is kind of Bowie-esque. It's so different to the rest of Take That stuff, and it's got electronic influences, it's got synthesizers, and I generally think this is an album that could fit into the 80s, and I could see lots of sort of 80s groups, of course not rock bands like AC/DC, but you could see a lot of 80s groups singing this stuff because it doesn't really fit in with much of the stuff that's released in 2010, in my opinion. But just a little bit of background about the album before we discuss the songs at length and maybe give a ranking of the songs on the album. It was actually released, of course, when Robbie Williams came back to Take That. He'd left for 15 years and he hadn't spoken to Gary Barlow for 15 years, but the two met up again, and the culmination was this. It culminated in all 5 band members being on the album. I really like the album cover again. It just symbolises the album. It's all about evolution, and it's a really good album cover. And of course, is duplicated for Progress, but in red, so you can distinguish between the two albums. But yeah, it's just a really nice, clean album cover. It's just got Take That and Progress on the top with 5 members. I just think it's really clean. And then the back cover has the songs and a little bit of legal information. In terms of the album inside itself, I was having a little look earlier because I haven't really looked at the album in length in terms of the physical format because I only really buy CDs to import to iTunes and then put on my iPod. But we've got a nice little sleeve in the album, which of course you've got the front cover which goes on the front of the album, and as well we've got a sleeve with all the lyrics from the songs. You've got pictures of all the members, which probably for the female contingent who bought this album, but you've got all the lyrics from all the songs, which is quite nice. I think that's it. I haven't really looked through this, but yeah, it's just the lyrics from all the songs, which is quite a nice feature, and then of course all the credits and who wrote all the songs. So that's quite nice to see. But it was a really well-performing album, actually. I didn't think it was at the time. I heard from quite a few people that would Take That fans that they weren't a fan of the album, and you know, that's fair enough, because a lot of the stuff Take That produced was kind of pop-based. You know, it was kind of boy band-based, and I mean that kind of like the Westlife in being poppy music and not supposed to really be much else. And I might be completely out in that comment, but I do think Progress has got him another meaning, but this performed really well. The critics really liked the album and thought it was, really good and really highlighted individual performances from all members of the band. It did really well in terms of general performance as well, not so much in terms of critics, but commercially it did really well as well. It was, I think I'm right in saying, in 2010 it sold, hold on, I've just checked my notes. It sold over 235,000 copies across the UK on the first day of release, and it had a 6-week run at number 1. Another stat I want to say, and it's quite interesting really, is that Take That are the only, in the 2000s this is in terms of a boy band, they are the only artist to have 4 million selling albums. So we have Progress, we have Beautiful World, we've got the Circus, and I think it was Never Forget the Collection. So you could say it's a bit of a cop-out in having a compilation album in that. But yeah, that's right. It's the band, they only had one to have 4 million selling albums in the 21st century, and had 6 weeks at number 1. It sold really well in the UK, did half decently in other countries. In some other European nations it had top 10 stints, but in the UK it did have 6 weeks at number 1. But again, it's a really good album. It's just got a lot more meaning than the other albums that precede it and the ones that go after it. But I do intend to listen to a bit more Take That stuff in the future and digest a bit of that, but I don't really think any of it could beat this album. So let's just have a quick chat about these songs in depth. Now, we've got 3 singles that were on this album. We've got The Flood, which I'm a bit disappointed. This cover's gone a bit dodgy. It's probably because I put the sleeve back in wrong. Oh, that's good, isn't it? But anyway, we've got 10 songs on the album. Oh, this album cover's not closing now. That's a bit dodgy, isn't it? Right, I'll have a look at that later. But on the back, we've got all the songs from the album. We've got 10 songs in total on the album. I listened to it again this morning. It's an album I've listened to multiple times, and listened to it again this morning before completing this review. And the first song you've got on it is The Flood, which is the first single from the album. You've got Kids and Happy Now as well, which were singles from the album. But I don't really see looking at these 10 songs a weak point. They're all very good songs. I think, and I tend to think this, I've got a bit of a prejudice against singles, really, because you hear them so much over the radio that they become a little bit repetitive. And the kind of uniqueness of the song, and it just goes away with listening to it so many times on the radio. But The Flood, it's a good song. It starts the album. Again, it's a good song. I think it is, it's written by all 5 of the members, of course, lead vocals, Williams and Barlow. I think it's worthy to say that this is a very much Robbie Williams' third in, isn't it? Yeah. It's a very much Robbie Williams-led album, which isn't really a surprise because, in my opinion, and probably influenced a lot by this album, Take That are a lot better when they are a fivesome with Robbie Williams. It's a very Williams-led album, but again, The Flood, good song. I listened to it this morning, and they're all good songs. They really are all good songs, which makes this a great album because only the great albums have however many songs they've got on them to be good songs. Then you have SOS, which is a song I didn't really like until I listened to it more recently. It's a more poppy number, this one is, written again by the 5, but Gary Barlow not on lead this time. Mark Owen's on lead, and I quite like Mark Owen's vocals actually. I think he does sing quite well and adds something else to the package almost. And again, that's a good song. Wait is a song again I wasn't really into till I've listened to it more recently, but I really do like this. It's Williams and Barlow back on lead vocals this time, but I do really like the song. It's again, it kind of appeals to the modern audience because it's got that more modern sound, but I think all these songs, probably apart from The Flood, probably could all fit in the 80s. The Flood kind of being that title track and trying to appeal to the masses, probably a little bit like on I have reviewed Bryan Adams' recent album Shine a Light, and I do feel a few of his songs on there to kind of appeal to the modern audience, whereas there are some songs that are really good and kind of have that more older feel. And I think SOS and Wait are really good songs. Then we move on to Kids, which is the 4th song on the album, the 2nd single that came out, and I really like Kids. Again, it's Mark Owen and Gary Barlow who do the lead vocals on this one. So Robbie Williams is the first one. He doesn't lead in terms of the vocals, but it's a really kind of protest song about the kids coming out. I'll just get the lyrics out of the little sleeve in here, but it's all about kind of governments and all that sort of stuff and leadership and kings and queens and presidents, ministers of governments, welcome to the future of your world. But it's a really kind of aggressive song and a real protest song, and it kind of leans almost into the pop rock genre because it's quite gritty. I don't really know how to explain it, but it is quite gritty and aggressive, and I do really like the song. But then after those 4 songs that I think open the album and you go, oh, okay, this is an interesting one, We then go into song 5, which is Pretty Things, and this isn't a single. It's got Williams and Barlow again on lead vocals. It's one that I really like, Pretty Things, because it's one of those that's a little bit slower. It's one of the ballads on the album, and I think it's got something different. It's got a unique quality that the previous 4 songs haven't got, and it's probably one of those that's looked over a little bit in terms of the album. But I do really like Pretty Things, again, with vocals from Williams and Barlow. But again, a really well-produced song. I think that it's a credit on this album that you've got the vocals. I think all the 5 members have taken that really good singers, which really helps. Lyrically, it's very good as well. And the production done by Stuart Price, who's released a lot of albums with modern artists. Done really well on that front as well. Then we move on to the 3rd single of the album, Happy Now, and again, that's a little bit more of a poppy number, which is why it's a single, even though Kids goes against that a little bit, but it is still a little bit of a poppy number, hence it being pop rock rather than just pop. But Happy Now, I have to say, it's a really good song. I do like Happy Now. Barlow, Williams and Owen on vocals on this one. A bit more of an upbeat tune. And yeah, it's probably a little bit poppy for me, possibly, if I had to pick a bit of a downturn. But, you know, this album was released in 2010. We're not going to have 70s and 80s values and take that as a pop band. So you can't just get the electric guitars out all of a sudden. You know, you can't go down that way. But the electronic sound of this album, I just really love it. And Happy Now is a good song. Probably not one of my favourites on the album, but it's a good upbeat song, and it's definitely up there. It's a good song. Then we move on to Underground Machine, which is Robbie Williams dominated, and probably why I really like this song. Again, Underground Machine. Nearly dropped the album there. I keep trying to get the sleeve out. I don't think I should put it back in. But again, Underground Machine. Just look at the lyrics in here. It is a really good song. It's kind of all about there's a boy and a girl and blah 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 blah, and they're all on about how the boy might be with the girl, but then does he really have the courage to do that, if you like? And if you are so up yourself, if you like, you need to get with this person. But it's a quite an aggressive number again. It's a little bit like Kids, and there are a bit of synthesizers used on this album, which I really like the inclusion of. And Underground Machine, it's a bit more of an aggressive song again, like Kids, and I really do like it. I don't know what the quality is about it, but it's just unique. As I say, it's Bowie-esque, this album, because there are so many songs that you wouldn't have on a pop album. Like, it's tricky to describe almost, but you couldn't have many of these songs, maybe 2 or 3, maybe The Flood and Happy Now, but a lot of these songs you wouldn't have on a poppy album because they are quite meaningful. They are, they're quite meaningful. They've got meaning. It's not just meaningless pop, which I think music has probably gone into over the years, and if that's a controversial statement, sorry. But I think that is the case for a lot of albums these days. But Underground Machine, again, I really like. Then we have What Do You Want From Me? We have Mark Owen on lead vocals on that one. And I do really like that one as well. Again, it's a bit more of a, not a protest number, but more of a plea. More of a, not an upbeat ballad, but quite a fast ballad from Mark Owen, saying that we're just wasting tears, and that after several years I'm not what you wanted. So it's a bit of a hard one to listen to and be positive about, but it's a really good song. I'm quite a fan of those more dreary songs. I think those songs with a bit more meaning and telling the story of something that's a little bit more negative they're just better songs. I don't know if I've described that very well, but I'm quite one for a depressing song. So that one is really good, and it's kind of saying, look, what do you want from me? Because you don't obviously want me like you used to. So what do you want from me? And I really like the song. It's a really good song, and again, Mark Owen just proves that you don't need just Robbie Williams and Gary Barlow to make songs good. Then we've got Howard Donald, who is the lead singer on Affirmation. Again, it's quite nice to see the inclusion of all the band members, really. It's not just Robbie Williams and Gary Barlow. But Affirmation, it's a bit of an interesting one for me. I don't really know how I feel about this. Of course, it's just he wants to basically affirm what he's fighting for and all that sort of stuff. He hasn't really got the strength to fight anymore. But it's an interesting one. I don't really know whether I think it's a great song, this. I think it's probably one of the weaker ones on the album, but that's because there's a lot of strong songs on the album. But I'm not really sure what I think about that. If I had to pick one of the filler songs, perhaps that might be one, but I'm not really sure about Affirmation. It's a bit of a tricky one. But it is a good song. It fits into the album and fits into the vibe as well. It's an album that comes together really well. There's that constant kind of upbeat vibe, I would say, to most of the tracks, and it doesn't mean that it gets repetitive at all. That's something I'm not trying to say that, look, there's an upbeat feel to the tracks and that they're repetitive. I'm not saying that at all. They are just really good. Then we move on to the final song on the album, which is 8 Letters, and funnily enough, I found out a bit of an interesting fact, which links this song to the 80s fantastically. This was co-written, of course, all the songs I mentioned prior have been written by the 5 members of the band, and this one was co-written with the members of Ultravox, so I've got Midge Ure, I can't remember anybody else, Chris Cross, good name, Warren Kane, and Billy Currie, the members of Ultravox, which of course came in the 1980s with singles such as Vienna, Dancing with Tears in Your Eyes, The Voice, Him, All Stood Still, just to name one or two, and Sleepwalk as well. And interesting that they co-wrote this. I'm not really sure in what capacity they co-wrote this. Again, I'm not really a bit flaky. I only learnt this morning that they co-wrote this song. But Gary Barlow, for the end of the album, goes back to lead vocals, and I do really like this one. It's quite a powerful one, and definitely the slowest one out of all of them. But it's still got that electronic feel, which is quite nice, and it's basically saying that, you know, even though time passes and, you know, we don't necessarily always think about it, that, you know, he does, what I forgot to say was all I had to say, 8 letters, 3 words, 1 meaning, which is, of course, 8 letters, 3 words, I love you. And it's quite a powerful one, and while I listen to it, I'm quite fond of it. It's a real nice way to finish off Progress, in my opinion. I mean, it's just a really good album. I think all the 10 tracks are good. It's one that I would never get tired of listening to, and it's quite a weird one in my collection because I'm not a big Take That fan. I'm not a big fan of post-millennial music, really, apart from stuff that the older bands produce. At the end of the day, I've got a Pink Floyd poster up there, I've got AC/DC and Kiss posters on that wall, so you wouldn't probably put me down as a Take That fan. I'm not a massive Take That fan, but this album, it reminds me of the 80s almost in terms of some of the values that were used in the 80s in terms of production. But it is a really good album. Just quickly before we end, because I have rambled on a little bit in terms of the ratings of these 10 songs. So I think my top 3 songs in the album, I think I talked about Underground Machine, Kids, SOS Wait, with some quite fond memories, as well as 8 Letters. And I think on reflection, I think probably Underground Machine's my favourite one from the album. I do really like the aggressiveness of that, and I'm probably quite fond of Robbie Williams as well, so that helps. 8 Letters is a really good one as well. I think in terms of my top 3 though, you've got to put Kids in your top 3. So in terms of my top 3, I think Underground Machine comes first, then Kids, and then really on any which day I could probably substitute Wait, SOS, and 8 Letters. But the other 5 songs are really good songs. You know, it's a really good album in my opinion. I don't really think you could take anything away from Progress. It's a really good album. It's an album I listen to with much fondness, and it's a real shame that I didn't really follow that up. Of course, it was the last album that Robbie Williams did with Take That after leaving pretty much soon after producing that album. It was a bit of a weird one where he came to produce the one album then left. Of course, it was the last one of Jason Orange as well. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it. Again, a very good album. I think I'll probably give it maybe an 8 out of 10. It's nowhere near the levels of the Ultimate album in terms of absolutely fantastic music, the kinds of, you know, Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall by Pink Floyd, Destroyer by Kiss, Back in Black by AC/DC, just to name one or two, and some of the Neil Diamond stuff that was produced is absolutely fantastic. It's not on the level of that, but it is at a very good level. I really do like this album, and if you haven't listened to it, it is well worth a listen, particularly if you do like the older styles of music and aren't really into modern music. This is definitely somewhere to start. And the EP, which I've got on here, which follows Progress, is a really good album as well. But thank you very much for watching. I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments on this album. If you've got any future album review suggestions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. Although it's very doubtful I'll have a physical copy of them, so might take a little bit away, but I'm not really bothered about that too much. But this is a new format. This is my first album review on camera. I tend to do them, you know, recording through a microphone and having pictures on screen. And I think I like this new format. I can ramble a bit more, which is something I always enjoy doing. But leave your opinions on that down in the comments. Any album reviews you want to see, leave them down in the comments. But of course, make sure to check out the channel page to subscribe for future content, and to make sure, of course, if you've got any requests, that I haven't covered them beforehand. But thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate your time today. Well, until the next album review, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.